dice. You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't roll them dice. You better roll
Ghoul
them
evening.
dice.
That's right. Good evening, Matt, and welcome to another Bloodcast.
So bad.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know, man.
People are tuning out right
It's
at the
May.
beginning. That's great.
Why is Watsy releasing a spooky supplement in May? I just, what are we gonna do in October? Like, this is just like jumping the gun on spooky season.
Yeah. I mean, it's Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. It's a new book, and we're here for it.
We're here for it. Hi,
May.
everyone.
It's
May.
Dungeon Master of None in May.
And in May, and I'm Dungeon Master Rob.
I'm Dungeon Master Matt.
And yeah, you guessed it. We're talking about the new Wizards of the Coast book, Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, which is exactly what it sounds like.
Yeah. Sorry this episode's a little later in the week.
It's, it is. It's that time of year. It's, we've been.
Is what
been,
it is.
Been,
Rob
been a
lost
little busy.
power. Dark power. The dark
powers took my power.
Yeah.
It was unfortunate.
That's okay. You don't need power because your group is back. Right?
That's right. I no longer need the internet ever. I'm fully analog once again. My regular group met for the first time in probably more than a year, like 14 months at least, maybe 15.
Yeah.
I'm not sure when exactly I think our last session was like right before lockdown here in Oregon, so mid-March. But yeah, met in
Mazel
person.
tov.
It was great. It was also exhausting. Turns out it's very hard to hang out with people, to be social, to see other human beings. It's been a while.
Being a dungeon master is draining.
It is.
And so is social settings. Oh, no.
It's going to take a bit to build those social muscles back up, but it was nice.
Wish
It was
people
nice
had told me this before I got into this gig.
It'll be nice to start flexing those muscles again. But yeah, folks, take it from me. Ease back into it. Set reasonable expectations for yourself.
Yeah, cut it short if you have to.
Yeah.
Okay, let's dive into this book first. What's the scariest thing you can think of, Rob?
The scariest thing I can think of, Matt, is it's dying alone, Matt.
Yeah. Yeah, the dying alone, the heat death of the universe. Yeah. I mean, those are scary. I was going to just say
what I meant to say was a spooky skeleton. That's the scariest thing.
I was going to say, what about a clown like somewhere you didn't expect?
That's right.
Like a little goblin, a little gremlin hidden away somewhere. You open a drawer and there it is, and you're like, oh.
What about like a doll, but it's evil? Right?
Yeah. Oh, an evil doll.
Or how about a child, but it's like a spooky child, like it's pale,
like a child with like a bowl haircut and
yes.
A name like Damien.
Scary, so scary. Or wait,
don't want to mess with that.
Some stairs, but they don't go anywhere.
Yeah. Mm.
Anyway, those are. They're all those are the scariest things I can think of, Matt.
Yeah. All right. Well, so we're here for all your ghoul and goblin and gremlin needs, skeletons too.
All the scariest things. They're right here, folks. This is, of course, a supplement based around. They're calling the setting Ravenloft, which is fair because that's
been the name.
But it's technically the Domains of Dread, which includes Ravenloft, right? But these are your spooky settings. If you wanted to run a horror campaign of any type, this is where you would probably come for resource and inspiration.
Yeah, basic idea here is this is kind of a campaign setting book, but also kind of just a dungeon master advice book. There's a couple player options at the beginning, but that's a little different, right? and so that's kind of great.
It is kind of great.
Yeah, it is kind of great.
The structure
this is actually
of this is,
we're gonna
yeah.
no spoilers. Like, I'm loving this.
Yeah, the structure of this is different, but like if I were going to write a book that was designed to make it easier to be a dungeon master for a specific setting, it would look a lot like this. Yeah. I really feel like they asked themselves, what do dungeon masters need to run a Ravenloft campaign, to run a horror campaign, and they gave it to them. I really like it. I think it's really, really well put together. So there's some player stuff. It's interesting and useful, but mostly this is not just like the tools you need, but like how to run it, which is awesome.
Yeah. The middle of the book is 120 pages, your standard campaign setting gazetteer of the Domains of Dread. There are some new ones. There are lots of old ones. There's some that have been substantially revamped. There's a bunch that are given just a couple paragraphs, which is kind of cool. Instead of, detailing out a whole nother one, there's a bunch of little ones. I love it. There's an adventure, and then there's a ton of Dungeon Master advice both before and after that, along with the player advice. What we're going to try, so that's what you're getting here, right, is a campaign setting. Again, if you listen to our earlier review of the old Domains of Dread, they're all kind of self-contained. There are ways to connect them, but they don't necessarily even have to be connected. And we were thinking we're going to set aside the specifics of the different Domains of Dread for maybe a part 2 of this episode and focus on the very cool Dungeon Master Advice, player options, and the adventure that's included here.
So chapters 1, 2, 4, and 5 are general advice. Chapter 3 is all the Domains of Dread. So we'll get to that in our second part of the review, but there's a lot to cover just in those other chapters, and I'm really, really excited about it. I think there's some really good stuff here. Before we jump into it, like, the obvious thing to say is that if you are not interested in a horror campaign at all, there's not a lot here for you. That being said, if you want to incorporate even some elements of a horror campaign, there's something valuable here, and it's a good book overall for DMs. I think anybody will get something out of this. It is, of course, focused on if you want to run a campaign with some spooky elements.
Yeah, I would say that's maybe the greatest strength here, is that I, who am not planning on running a horror campaign, am not currently running a horror campaign, still found this incredibly useful because I occasionally have, arcs or sessions where there are elements of horror or kind of scary stuff, and that's good enough for me. Like, it's still useful enough to be like, yeah, I'm glad I really bought this. Yeah.
And there were some parts of this that, even though they were about the horror genre, horror games, that I thought were really useful for thinking about how to structure and frame any game in any genre, and that was very useful to me, and I'm very excited to talk about that. I think this is a super interesting book made by thoughtful people who are genuinely interested in running good, dynamic, exciting, engaging campaigns. I thought this was, uniquely created by people who are running games in the 21st century. People who have recently dungeon mastered and are interested in not to make any suggestions about any of the other books, but it felt like this is actually designed for people who are trying to run campaigns for people, real people.
Okay, speaking of the people who play your game, let's introduce them to this setting. Let's talk about the introduction.
And I really like this. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but it does a number of things, and the things that I think it does really well is it provides sort of what it means to have horror in your game. This is one of the first sections that's there. This whole introductory chapter, really like short and sweet, lays out what's in the book and what to expect. And it's got these 5 elements of horror in your game, right? Foundations for fears, what's scary, genres of horror, what does it mean to be in a horror game, creating atmosphere. Matt and I have talked a lot about this. There's some really good advice here. Thrills you control, right? How to create frightening themes without threat, and then a focus on fun. And it goes into greater detail on all of these later, but I like that it lays out these basic elements before moving on. And then
it does the same thing, I would say, for the campaign setting specifically, for the Domains of Dread. in 2.5 pages, or maybe 3 pages, 4 pages, I had a better understanding of what the domains of dread are than reading the entire second edition book. It's very straightforward. You get a picture of what the Dark Lords are, what the Dark Powers are, what a domain is, and, some general advice.
It's got a section on the 7 secrets of Ravenloft, which tell you exactly what's going on. It's not a world, right? It's not a planet. The Dark Powers control everything. The domains are there to imprison the Dark Lords. The mists are everywhere. Nowhere is safe. Heroes are confronting horrors. Only fear is certain. Great. Super easy. 7 things.
Yeah.
I actually want to dwell on this for a second, because a lot of people who have really good settings are really bad at boiling them down into what is this about? And this is hard to do. This is a very it's a challenge to summarize your big idea. And this is so good. This is such a good, it's just a few paragraphs. It's bam, this is what Ravenloft is. I love this. I think every campaign setting should include this. So it goes into a little bit more detail on all of these things. It tells you what they're about. And one thing
even gives you 3 teasers for what the Dark Powers might be, which I love. I was I feel like we said that when we were talking about the Ravenloft. Give us a bunch of options for what they could be.
Yep.
And then let us pick. Perfect. They did that.
I love. I think this has become kind of a trope, but I think it's an important one in a lot of campaign settings to have one thing that is explicitly not defined. So the morning in Eberron, or what happened to what's his face, the big god in Golarion, the god
Aradin in the Pathfinder
Aradin,
setting.
What happened to him, the Pathfinder setting. And in this, it's who are the Dark Powers? What are the Dark Powers? And they give you some suggestions, but ultimately it's up to you. I think this is great. I also really liked, this is just, I just really thought this was fun. There's letters in this section from Van Richten's sort of allies in fighting evil. And one thing I have sort of that I griped about when we talked about Ravenloft previously is that it all feels very grim. It still feels very grim, but I like that they expanded the sort of retinue of monster hunters and ostensible good guys to include a few other interesting archetypes. There's
right. Most of these existed in second edition. They were just in one of the 1,000 supplements, right? They just picked the best ones and brought them back.
Yeah, they're all here. So you've got Ez de Avenir, who used to be Esmeralda, but now goes by Ez. It's great. Jennifer and Lowry Weathermay Foxgrove, which is a terrific pair of
Victorian-sounding names.
Yes. There's Alanic Ray and Dr. Arthur Sedgwick, and then, of course, Van Richten himself. And it gives just such great flavor to the setting. So A+ on this introduction. It makes me want to play. It gives me a clear understanding of what I'm going into, and everything is expanded on further later in the book. This is exactly what an introductory section should be.
Now, there's a great section for players, and I wish this section would be released as a free supplemental PDF, or at least the first part, because there's advice on consent is important. Know what's too far, how to play a character in a horror game and have fun, and what to think about when creating your character. So that's really nice.
We talked about this in both our Call of Cthulhu and our discussion of the Domains of Dread episodes. But scaring your players, creating a scary atmosphere is challenging, but rewarding. And it also doesn't mean, it doesn't mean you're trying to literally prey on somebody's real life fears. That's not what it means to.
Opposite of that.
Yes, it's much more nuanced than that, and also it's very hard to legitimately scare somebody. So you rely on setting and atmosphere and dread and suspense, and this book is so good about making that clear. And it repeats a lot of things that Matt and I said, so of course I approve of it. And it has all of these great sections on, in this, how to play a horror hero, a horror character, and what to expect, and how to open yourself up to, I guess, suspense and fear without in a safe way, without, causing trouble for yourself and others. And there's a little section on habits of horror heroes, which I like a lot. Actually, this is great advice in general. I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 things. Focus on the game, right? Atmosphere requires attention. I think this is really a good point because not every game needs like everyone's undivided attention, but horror requires, I think, a little bit more focus to like capture the feel. Limit comedy, I agree with, though horror can be funny, and they make this point later on, but I think it's good to sort of try to keep everybody a little bit more on track. This is the point I just made, player fear versus character fear, right? Knowing the difference between scaring characters and scaring players. Consent is a priority, right? Their enjoyment is more important than shock value is the sentence at the end of this, which is just like such an obvious thing that I can't believe it has to be said. But we have seen some people.
I've been in games, yeah.
Some people have been spouting off on the internet the last couple of weeks about how they like to shock and terrify their players and they won't ask for consent or something like that. And you can do that, I guess, if you want to. That's not fun. Nobody likes that.
Yeah.
That's not really scary. That's just kind of unpleasant for everybody involved.
Just makes you an asshole,
Yeah. Know what's too far. Again, part of the same thing. Add to your own terror, right? This is great advice, by the way, is finding out like what your character is frightened of and then helping your DM by playing into that.
I mean, this is the basic idea of role-playing games, right? It's just some more explicit advice. It's like, you've got to play along, and if the theme of the game is scariness, you've got to play along with that, right?
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean giving up your consent. It means your character developing, some sort of horror at whatever's going on.
Right. And then, of course, there's enjoy the struggle. And I really like, encouraging people to lean into what's potentially going to be a difficult and, challenging adventure for your character. They will probably not come out unscathed. It's a good thing to sort of prepare yourself for. Some people want to play a game, and there's nothing wrong with this, where they're big, shiny heroes and they beat all the bad guys and they look beautiful at the end. And some people want to, come out bloody and bruised and, maybe a little scarred, and a horror game is great for that. And I think setting this expectation early is important and good.
Yeah. It's what makes, other than, there's a lot of things that makes Hellboy, for example, different than other superheroes. One is that, like, he doesn't fight, Dr. Mole Man or whatever. He fights some mythological vampire being or, some very scary
or
evil.
occult Nazis, a classic.
Occult Nazis, classic, some worm from outer space or whatever.
Conqueror worm. Yep.
And, he does beat them up and win most of the time. But sometimes he, learns some, really dark things about himself, about the universe. And he deals with that by, going and drinking a beer and being like, nuts. And that's fine, right? You can have, but he then, develops these sort of psychological horror type things. Anyway, point being, this is good advice.
So there are 3 character options. I think we've discussed them.
We've discussed these in the Unearthed Arcana, the Reborn, the Hexblood, and the Dampier. Now, I don't think I have anything to say about these other than these seem like fine character options. They're all ones that you can add on to other characters. So, if you have players who are, interested in min-maxing and you want to let them, these are good options. If you're, I know someone in my party is going to get pissed if someone makes a first-level character that's going to be better than their third-level character. An Aarakocra Dampier or whatever is going to be amazing in that they have a 35-foot fly, walk, and climb speed and a bunch of other abilities, which is, it's fairly more powerful than an elf or whatever.
Yeah. And even without that, these are all pretty powerful compared to some species. I don't think it's too broken, but be aware That there is maybe some min-max potential that may bother people, but I think these are fun and good, especially for a Ravenloft campaign. But
yeah,
be aware.
And then there's two subclasses that we've also talked a little bit about. In addition, right, there's a bunch of dark gifts. Sorry, I didn't want to skip over the dark gifts because these are new. They're like kind of like horror backgrounds, how you've already been touched by something scary.
These are really cool, actually. I liked these a lot. Basically, they're just like a background. They give you some skills and maybe a language or something or a tool proficiency. But then, basically, there's a once per short rest or once per long rest sort of reroll or roll option that you can take to add a little bit of spice to your character. Maybe you're haunted by whispers from the beyond. Maybe your shadow can follow you. Maybe you're being haunted by creatures from...
It's a critical fail thing that you could choose
yes.
if you wanted to, right? And one of the other ways you could use this, you could give every player one of these at the beginning or let them pick, or you could use these as basically rewards that characters could take or leave when they, I don't know, get to some ancient sarcophagus at the end of an adventure.
Mm-hmm. And none of these are super game breaking, so I think it's really it would be easy and good for you to... It would be possible to add these either as a character option or as a reward somewhere in the campaign without breaking anything. I think they're pretty neat, well designed, and very thematic.
And there's lots of fun ones. There's like one where you have like a little symbiote person growing out of you, or maybe like a tattoo or something.
I love the Watchers one. You're being followed by strange beasts from beyond.
Like squirrels follow you everywhere.
I mean, this is written as they're like little, like tiny shadow creatures. I also think this would be like a great, like Hounds of Tyndalos thing. You're constantly being, followed by creatures from strange dimensions. A lot of these are fun.
You could even spin it if you're, running like a Forgotten Realms campaign. You're like, the Harpers are watching me. That they are actually evil, and they are following me.
And then there's two subclass options. There's the Bard College of Spirits and the Warlock of the Undead. I think we talked about both of these already.
We did when they came out in Unearthed Arcanas before. I did want to point out, they both fit the horror theme very well, and I like the Bard one a lot. It like leans into this, like you tell a story to the party and you roll on a table, and that determines what story you remember at the moment. The
art and the flavor very much evokes a Victorian seance, medium fortune teller, which I think is fun. I just think it's like terrific. You're somebody who either actually or sort of speaks to spirits, and the character is like wearing this like black Victorian gown. I love it. I think this is fun.
Tarocca card.
Yeah, Tarocca card.
It's very has a like you want to be part of the Hermetic Order of the
yes, that's
Golden
right. You want to be part of the Order of the Golden Dawn, or you want to be Aleister Crowley's protege. It's awesome. I think this is fun.
Learn to do seances. I did want to point out something that just super sucks that I had to double check on, and it's maybe I'll be wrong on this, but I don't think so. It's Spirit Session, which is Spirit Session is one of my favorite abilities. You can do a little ritual chant to get a new spell. It's a little more versatile than the Bard's sort of normal pick up a spell. Kind of brings the other players in. I like it a lot. One that made me very sad is Spiritual Focus. It's their third level ability, and it says you employ tools to aid you in channeling spirits, be they historical figures or fictional archetypes. Use the following objects as a spell casting focus for your bard spells: a candle, a crystal ball, skull, spirit board, or Tarocca deck. Cool. You can cast bard spells without an instrument or whatever. Starting at 6th level, when you cast a bard spell that deals damage or restores hit points through the spiritual focus, roll a d6, and you gain a bonus to 1 damage or healing roll of the spell equal to the number rolled. Cool. You basically better healer on healing spells, better damage dealers on damage spells. However, Rob, do you remember the rules for a spell casting focus, or do I need to refresh them for you?
Refresh all of us, though. I'm pretty sure I know where you're going with this.
Right. So a spell casting focus, a wand, whatever the druid's focus is, whatever it is, it can replace inexpensive material components on the spell. You pay 5 gold for a wand. You don't have to have a pinch of sulfur or whatever. If you look at the bard list and the list of their healing spells and damage dealing spells. Now remember, bards, or at least especially this bard, can pick up other spells. But the vast majority of healing spells, especially the ones you use all the time, like Cure Wounds or Healing Word, and I think all but one of the bard's innate damage dealing spells, all but maybe Cloud of Daggers, don't have a material component, which means rules as written, this does almost nothing.
It's clear to me,
I feel like they intended it something else, like for every healing and damage spells.
It's clear that they did not intend that, but Matt's absolutely correct. As written, this basically does nothing, which is too bad.
Yeah.
But I don't think that was intended, but
I would just say, if it was at my table, comparing it to the other 3rd level bard abilities, I'd be like, yeah, you just use this on any spell. You can use the spiritual focus to cast any spell you want.
yeah. But Matt's right that as written, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
Anyway, these are great. There's a section on backgrounds. Again, helpful, nothing groundbreaking here. And then...
yeah, just more stuff. However,
Stuff.
I will say, if we're saying, oh, maybe there's a little bit of power creep, again, this does not matter. It's not enough to matter at all. But the investigator is by far the best background because they get thieves' tools as one of their tool proficiency, which is the one tool that is like should be on par with a skill because it's pretty useful.
Yeah, it's very
also
useful.
I love investigators, so that's great.
It's
so all characters should be investigators.
It's a great background, and one of the things that this book does, if you want to do this, is allow you to easily model a Call of Cthulhu campaign in Dungeons and Dragons. If you wanted to run Call of Cthulhu but with D&D rules, you have basically everything you need here, and the investigator background is part of that. But Matt's right, it's a little stronger than other backgrounds.
All right, let's talk about chapter 2, which is great because it has 2 sections: advice on different types of horror, but also creating your own domain of dread, right? And which is something I feel like Rob and I, we were just talking about this. Like, why isn't there advice on like whipping up one of these bad boys for your own game?
And if you listen to our bonus episode on our Patreon, we built some villains and we followed a lot of these rules. But there's two great sections here. One is how to create a Dark Lord, and then one on how to create a domain of dread. And I'll tell you what I like about this is that a lot of Wizards books, a lot of D&D books feel like they're very protective of their setting. They don't want to tell you. They want to like encourage you or give you the tools to build your own things. But this is just like, here's how to make a Dark Lord if you want to make one of your own. Here's how to make a domain. Here are sort of like the processes to follow. And they're excellent. These are really good. The key thing, sort of like what's so great about Ravenloft and what's so great about the Dark Lords is that they're all super powerful, evil villains, but they've all been...
point out they're not all super powerful.
Oh, you're right.
But
Sorry,
they're all
actually
super evil.
They're all super evil. They're actually not all of them are powerful, but they've all been undone by their own, corruption, and they all have a ironic, jail, and it's just like a terrific setting. All of these Dark Lords are very, very interesting in one way or another, and so here's all these great tools. There's even, charts to roll on to get you started. This is terrific. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, like, if I wanted to build a domain of dread for, let's say, Henry Kissinger, right?
I mean, what he would... he'd have to live in a Cambodian village and tend to the wounded children there every day or something like that, or worse.
No,
he'd have
he would have to have some power, right?
Oh, right. Yes.
Right.
That's right. He'd have to be. So yeah. So he would be like Kurtz. He'd have his own sort of
He would be
like-
directly in charge of all the society, and it would be fucking awful. Right?
Yes. Yeah. He'd
just-
be like ruling like some horrible cult in the deep jungle, and it would be a nightmare, and he would never be able to leave. And
I think he would just keep another war going to keep some peace going, but he would actually have to feel some of the consequences.
Yes.
Like whenever anyone died, the dark powers would basically have him know them as if they were a member of his own family or something.
or rather, like, I mean, he would never be able to like gain more power or like
Right.
achieve any like he's
also,
the war-
and everyone would hate him. Everyone would
hate him.
know he was a villain instead of
the
inviting
war,
him to fancy
exactly.
talks.
That would be
Yeah.
the thing, is he'd be known, right? That's the thing. Okay, so he'd be fighting a war and he'd be winning. He's always winning,
Right.
but
Or manipulating war. Yeah.
everyone hates him anyway. Everyone knows him to be a monster, and that's his domain of dread, right?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's good. I
Yeah.
like that. So yeah, so you've been given the tools here.
Just an example there.
Just theoretical.
And then
I love-
we have a section. Sorry, go ahead.
No. I just love these like endless torments, right? Like, here are like the instruments of the Dark Lord's suffering. Deathless returns, right? Those who die return. That's an endless cycle, right? No matter what, the same things happen. They can never learn, right? This is the thing that Matt's favorite Dark Lord, Azalin, right?
Aslan.
He's already incredibly powerful, incredibly knowledgeable, but he can never gain more knowledge, right? Anyway,
Yeah. Anyway, the next section is, I think, my favorite in the whole book.
I loved this so much, Matt. I'm glad you liked this one. I love this section. The section on genres of horror is a masterclass. I often feel, I'm very critical. I'm a big like literature media nerd, and I often feel like the writers of D&D don't really care about this stuff, but I felt like they really are. They're really interested in the actual like horror genre, horror stories, how to tell good stories, right? You don't need to sort of like put everything in boxes to write or tell a good story, but it helps.
But you can, and I
But
like
you
it.
can, and it helps, especially if you're trying to tell a story for other people, right? If you're trying to bring your players along, it helps to have these touchstones. And so this genres of horror has 6 basic genres of horror, and then even like a few others that are written about in brief. And this is so good.
So the original Dungeon Master Guide, not to like ruin the good vibes on this excellent section, the original Dungeon Master Guide kind of does this a little bit with some broad strokes, but I
I
just
don't think
found
it does
this
it as
so
well.
much more
Yeah.
useful. I would love to see another book do this for like different types of fantasy, just in more detail with the tables and the boxes and different types of action or political thriller. Anyway,
No.
yeah,
I mean, a lot of the books try to do this,
yeah.
and they're willing to discuss genre, but this one I felt like really got it right. I was really impressed by this. So, what do we have here? What are the main categories of horror that it talks about?
It starts with body horror, and there's a lot of great examples of like what this is and also what it isn't. And a lot of these, and this is amazing. I'm so blown away and thrilled that like Wizards did this. Can I just read this from the section on body horror? The genre has a history of portraying disability as monstrous. Be aware of these tropes and avoid them. Right? Wow. Great. Yes.
What a great like one sentence thing to say. Also, like I don't know where this is, but it encourages you at some point in the book to subvert tropes, which I think is super important, especially when you are trying. There's nothing scary about what you expect, right? So like that's part of horror, right? Is to subvert tropes, but it's also just a good idea, right? And portraying again disability as monstrous is so it's bigoted, but also it's very tired. You know, it's just like not a very good like storytelling tool, and I'm just so glad they included this section.
Yeah, there's. I mean, the only thing I would say is like the only thing that's missing, and Wizards doesn't really do this outside of Appendix N, was just like list the things that are good body horror, right? You know.
Yeah, I would have liked some examples. What I did like is that each of these sections includes monsters from the monster manual or from elsewhere,
Right.
suggestions for villains, and then torments. And so for like, and they're on like a table. So the body horror monsters include things like a gibbering mouther and a
Slods,
a slod, a flesh golem. A great example of a villain is, an abandoned homunculus made in the image of its creator's child, now left to fester alone. And then the torments include things like, the Dark Lord is perpetually gravid with a monstrous egg sacs that hatch waves of insects. Like, yeah. This is some Videodrome shit. Like, you love a little bit of, I tell you what, I have a problem with body horror. It creeps me the fuck out. I would probably not run. Matt, do you remember that you ran a body horror campaign for us? We fought like the Flesh Warper in one of our
Yes, I do.
like when we were like teenagers.
Yeah.
I think like you turned my dwarf cleric's arm into like a tentacle. It was awful. I hated it. But
Yeah.
this no, it's okay. It was spooky shit. It freaked me out. I love how good this is. It gives you exactly what you need to get started and not anything more.
And this is why I said this is maybe a good book for almost everyone. Like just another one of the villains, the priests of a forgotten god who attempt to raise their deity from the flesh of the faithful. Right now, depending on how your style is, like tactically at the table, that might not include that much body horror, or it could be almost all completely off screen. But what a good villain, right?
Yeah. So all the sections are like this. The next one is on
cosmic horror.
Which is again,
everyone who runs Call of Cthulhu should read this section. It's 2 pages. It's a nice reference.
Once again,
you need a plot. Roll on the table.
And this is like just like a very easy and obvious thing to avoid, but like this genre has a history of framing marginalized demographics as monstrous and stigmatizing mental illness. Be aware to avoid those tropes, right? This is a huge problem with Lovecraft, is that he conflates madness with evil, or evil with madness, or just the way that he treats mental illness in general is not great.
Right.
But
you could have added, like is steeped in like social Darwinism and scientific racism too. They could have been a little more specific with what, but whatever.
Yeah.
This isn't for a history class.
Yes. And again, it's got like the monsters you can use, the villains. I love. It's clear that who wrote this is a fan of the genre and has read it, right? So, like in the cosmic horror villains, they have something like an astronomer broken and enraptured by what they saw in the stars. Classic cosmic horror villain. The torments include any object the Dark Lord sees is drained of all but one portentous color. A plot is
the bakers in a small town have started filling their pastries with a popular, delicious, and faintly glowing blue goo.
It's just terrific, right? It's just.
Have you tried a blue goo kolache? It's definitely not enslaving us to the alien overlords.
That's right. The next section, which I hadn't considered, I was impressed by this, is dark fantasy, right? This is your, I don't know, like your Conan and a lot of related fantasy tropes.
Your dark fisted fantasies, your dark twisted fantasies, my dark twisted fantasy. It's got it all.
Which is just classic evil, nihilistic, a little bit of like grim dark. Lots of good things to work with here as usual.
It's like remember when you have those like villains in basically every D&D setting? They're like, I want to destroy everything, right? You can flesh that out a little bit more using this section.
I wear a suit of black armor with spikes, and I want to crush everyone.
Why?
Exactly.
Well, let's tell it.
I want to crush everyone beneath my iron, boot. But like, and I've created a race of horrible troll orcs. Trollocs.
Trollocs, yes.
Just to do so. And anyway, just
like imagine. I mean, one of these is so great. Like imagine, these could be whole campaigns. One villain is a god, killed all their peers, and now rules the mortal realm. Like if you want a dark fantasy, set it where there's one god, and they live in the mortal realm, and they're in charge now.
This is the explicit
Attack
sort of like
dethrone them.
Plot of Mistborn, right? The bad guy won, and now the heroes are like living in the consequences of that world. This is a great Sanderson plot. I really enjoyed seeing this spelled out, and it gave me a lot of really good ideas.
The next section, Rob, would thou like to live deliciously?
I would like to live deliciously. The next one is folk horror, which I really liked. If you wanted to run a campaign set in like The Witch or Midsommar or, any number.
Something with an umlaut or a weird letter spelling.
Something a little bit more subtle, but also horrifying in its own way. This is so great. Like it says, here's this section on it. Folk horror explores fears of isolation, superstition, paranoia, and lost truths. Seemingly idyllic communities, rural reclusiveness, forgotten traditions, and naturalistic cults all frequently feature in horror adventures, particularly as they contrast with what majorities consider the status quo. If you wanted to run a Wicker Man campaign, if you always ever wanted to shout, "Not the bees!" at the top of your lungs.
How do I get burned?
It's not going to bring your fucking honey back! This is your opportunity to do it. I mean, what I love about this is like some of these are going to be harder. Some of these are more subtle than others, right? A folk horror is going to be a little bit more difficult to do. But I love that they considered it and they put it in here and they gave you a lot of like tools to do it. And I love
I feel confident enough I could run some of these plots. You arrive at a village and they say, hunt down the monster blamed for causing a blight. A unicorn that the village was supposed to sacrifice. What a fun plot for your players. Do they catch the unicorn? Do they talk to it? Do they just kill it? I don't know. That's going to be fun.
I loved like the monster selection here, like the myconids, awakened trees, a green hag, a will-o-wisp. I have to admit, right? Like it's rare that I'm like surprised and like give an idea I had never thought of, but this was terrific. I was like, oh, I could run a folk horror campaign. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll run a one-shot for Halloween.
Next one's Ghost Stories.
Ghost Stories, which is classic, straightforward, but again, really well done here. And then like maybe not my favorite, but I thought like I just really liked this one is of course Gothic horror, which like really, I love Gothic horror. We talked a lot about Frankenstein in our Domains of Dread episode, but the way that they describe this, right? Again, I love this. This is a little bit like overwrought, but it also like Gothic horror is overwrought. So, under that mask of civility, there is depravity. Under that thin veneer of society, there is wickedness. Under all the trappings of sophistication, are we not all predators or prey? Gothic horror shatters the lies we trick ourselves into believing and shows that we, not some distant entity, are and ever shall be the architects of our doom. Right? This is the joke, right? The real monster is Frankenstein, not his monster, right? It's not the joke, but like it's the point, and it's now become like a joke. Anyway, I like it. Yes. I'm a fan.
No, I'm a fan too. It asks the tough questions, like or questions that will horrify you, as like the Huns are invading and will replace you as the supreme culture on the western steppe of Eurasia. Or the local Hot Topic is closing down. All kinds of horror for goths.
That's right. The most terrifying things that could happen to any goth anywhere.
There's 4 short entries on... Sorry, did you want to talk more about
No, that's it. Go ahead.
There's 4 short entries on 2 of which I wish were bigger entries because they're my favorite.
Yep.
Are disaster horror, occult detective stories, psychological horror, and slasher horror.
And they didn't have to do this, and I'm glad they did. And these are short, and disaster horror is right. Like, what if you want to run a zombie adventure or like a The Road adventure, right? If you wanted to explore that, occult detective,
Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead, or World War Z.
Occult detective stories is That's Call of Cthulhu right there. This is one
Right.
they could expand on, but it's
But it's also like, occult detective stories, which is my favorite because I like solving things, right? It could be a little bit of like Sherlock Holmes or like the Guy Ritchie Sherlock Holmes, but the bad guy was actually a spellcaster. Or, some of the darker, like, urban fantasy style stuff where you've got, some detective vampire hunters or a wizard detective or something. And some of the things are actually kind of scary. X-Files, basically.
X-Files, right.
With magic.
Which I think is a great model for D&D, especially if you wanted to run a episodic campaign, a Monster of the Week type campaign.
The thing about, and again, this is praise, not just criticism. It's like these sections for the first ones we talked about were so good. I turned to the next page and saw Occult Detective Stories and realized it was shorter than the other ones. I was like, oh, I wanted more of this. I wanted it to be longer.
Yeah.
So that means it's good stuff.
They include, psychological horror and slasher horror. And I had never, I love a psychological horror story, but I had never considered how you might run that. But I thought this was so brilliant, right? Here's a little bit from that. When creating adventures rooted in psychological horror, consider common fears and anxieties. These readily become metaphors for villains and monsters. Fear of being judged by one's peers might manifest as a jury of Nothics, while fear of change can be represented by Medusa that petrifies those who threaten her community's status quo. That's a great way to transpose a pretty complicated, psychological horror is hard to do. Those are complicated stories to tell, but it gives you a great tool for how do I make this into a D&D campaign? I still probably wouldn't run one. Sounds like a huge challenge, but I love that they gave you some pretty concrete tools for doing that. I thought this was really the thing that I keep coming away from this, Matt, is that these are real horror enthusiasts who really have read and watched and thought about the genre and put that into this book. I'm really impressed by it.
Yeah. This was so impressive. I read this section and I said, if I didn't have two other campaigns planned past the one I'm running now, it's the occult detective stories and thinking about that in D&D. Shit, I already brought up Hellboy, but I'm going to bring it up again, right?
That's right. We love Hellboy, folks.
The Bureau of Paranormal Research and Defense, right, which is occult detective stories, but it's also folk horror. I was like, in a world like Eberron or even the Forgotten Realms, having a group that is consulting detectives to fight the paranormal that's not just a couple of skeletons, the ones that are really challenging, the ones that keep coming back, right? It might work best in Eberron just because there's a more scientific feel to the world, despite having every magical fantasy thing. It'd be oh, your job is to solve ghost crimes in the city of Sharn.
I think that would be
will you accept the challenge? Yeah. Are you a badass dude enough to solve ghost crimes?
Are you badass enough dude to solve ghost crimes?
Let's do it. Okay. No, this is great stuff. Anyway, that's that chapter. Man, it's a good chapter.
Great chapter.
One of the better maybe one of the best DM chapters to come out since this edition's been published.
This might be one of my favorite DM chapters I've ever read. I was inspired. I was excited. I would reread that just for fun. I got so much out of that. Huge fan.
Okay. At this point, we're going to skip 120 pages ahead to the final chapters of the book. We're going to skip over all the domain setting stuff, save it for a future episode, come back to learn what our favorite domains of dreads are. We're going to do a domain of dread tier list.
We'll rank them. We'll make them fight. We'll do a battle royale. So chapter 4 is just on horror adventures and how to run them. Love it. And I think it's worth reading the introduction because I think this is really, really smart. Creating your own horror adventures is like crafting any other D&D adventure with one exception. Your goal is to horrify your players in the most fun way possible. Frightening adventures benefit from an atmosphere of dread, conceived through a combination of terrifying narratives, dramatic presentation, and game elements encouraging fear. Drawing out the anxiety and anticipation of players requires deliberate consideration, though. Great. That's such a good summation of how to run a horror adventure. I thought that was very well put.
The first part of this follows up that last sentence there, right? What's the careful consideration that you and your friends should do, right? And a lot of the things we're going to mention here, we've mentioned previously, and go back to our whole episode on consent in gaming, because there's a bunch of, like, you know, basically consent and consideration, the two C's. Consent of consideration, call of COC, right? The things you want to think about before introducing horror themes, and then the conversations that you want to have at session 0, and maybe during every session, to be honest.
And this is such an obvious thing to do because everybody's trying to have fun, but in this section they make a great point that you need to understand horror, right? And this book assumes that you and your players enjoy the thrill and suspense of scary stories. The audience of a horror movie, and this is a great example, can enjoy the menace on screen because they know it can't harm them, and they have an idea of what to expect from the film's trailer, right? So if people go to see a Jason movie, they're expecting to see murder, right? And they're probably fine with that, right? And if they go to watch a Saw movie, they're expecting to see some, like, body horror and, you know, limbs being sawed through and whatever.
Guy. Mr. Saw. I think it's his name.
Love Mr. Saw. And sometimes, like, they can be surprised by something they weren't expecting that's, like, particularly horrible, but that's part of the deal. They know what they're getting into, which is why it makes...
If the movie has jump scares, the trailer probably also has jump scares.
Right. Which is why the horror survey is just, it's the same as giving your, I mean, it's much like giving your players a synopsis or a trailer, like if you were a movie director, right? It's just like
giving them that, like, you know, one page, what's your red, yellow, green list on things.
But not only from, like, just this is a courtesy and a good idea, but, like, this is just, some people over the past few weeks in response to this have, like, really, like, rankled at it, and it's just, like, just from a storytelling perspective, it makes perfect sense to just tell people what to expect, and this is a great way to decide what your players want to experience and give them that, which is exactly what anybody telling any story does, and it just requires a little bit more negotiation in Dungeons and Dragons because you're collaboratively, I don't know, I just, it seems like so obvious to me, and I'm absolutely mind-boggled that anybody wouldn't think this is a good idea. But I love how this is laid out.
This also introduces the X card and sort of, you know, asking permission. This is something we've talked already about in depth on this show. But yeah, these are both great ideas, especially for horror games.
There are
There's a lot of pacing and, like, describing advice too. Sorry.
Yes,
I really.
That's exactly what I was going to talk about. I really like this. I don't have a ton to say about it, but this is useful advice for anybody, not just if you're running a horror campaign, but there's tips on how to pace the game, right? On how to just move through it, and on how to describe things. And this is just generally very good advice. It's just very solid DM advice.
Just reminders, you know, less is more, right? Especially, you know, don't spend 10 minutes describing how horrible the laboratory of Dr. Mordenheim is. Just, you know, get on with it. Let the players fill in the gaps.
Right. This is also...
Rob, don't you wish that this book, though, just told us what spells clerics use when they come to Ravenloft? I mean, we could have spent these 30 pages doing that. Sorry.
We could have.
Just
I'm
second
sorry.
edition dig.
I'm sorry that we didn't spend more time discussing which druid abilities don't work when they're in the domains of dread. That's something I wish we had more of.
God damn it, second edition. That was a rough one for us to read, I think. It was that part was so boring. I made myself read the whole thing.
Boring. It was so long, too. God,
bored.
you would never get away with that. You could just do anything you wanted in the 80s and 90s. You could just, like, publish any sort of horse shit, and it wouldn't matter. Somebody would buy it.
Yeah. Anyway, there's also
this is where
right,
the
subverting cliches.
yeah, there's
Let's
just like a
talk
little
about this
like
box
check,
text. Great.
little sub box on it. It's so short, it's so obvious. It says, avoid drawing inspiration from stock characters in fiction and film. I will say, with one exception, it can be fun if you're trying to be a little like tongue-in-cheek to like play up like a Dracula thing, or like, you know, if you're drawing on a like stock character that's not like a racist like stereotype, like if you're gonna do like the Dracula accent, or if you're going to, you know, have a you know, like an actual like Victor Frankenstein like over the top, if you're trying to sort of like be a little bit satirical. In general though, this is great advice. Don't draw from stock characters, don't like lean on cliches.
Yeah. Portray people of different genders, ethnicities, sexualities. Great.
Yeah, just include different people. This is again basics. Show how multiple people from the same culture are different. Again, it's shocking that this needs to be said, but it's a great advice. And I like this last one a lot.
That can be tough in the way. This is good advice, and all Dungeon Masters should follow it. It can be incredibly tough given the material we're going to talk about in a future episode, The Domains of Dread, where there are entire worlds where everyone is kind of samey.
Right.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
But that's okay. This is something you can do at the table every session, right? As you introduce and people meet different people.
Right.
Whatever. Anyway,
Right.
just a point, something to be aware of.
This last option, right, matter-of-factly provide opportunities for everyone to be exceptional. Magical settings bear no resemblance to real-world history, and character creation rules presuppose no standard bar for heroics. This is sort of explicitly saying that no matter what race or gender or functionality your character has, that it does not stop them from being a hero. They're mechanically as able as anybody else in the party, and they and all relevant NPCs should be given a chance to be heroic. This is, again, perfectly obvious, but a good thing to lay out.
Yeah. The rest of this is kind of a little toolkit for running your first horror campaigns. We have a huge monster section. We have a sample adventure, and we have some advice on curses, fear, stress, and haunts, and survivors.
Sorry, I don't want to go into this in too much detail because we've been going on for a long time, but I love these curses because they're mechanically simple, but like very. They're new and interesting, and they're pretty easy to implement. They all have sort of a burden and a resolution, right? And I love this. I think this is well done. I also really like the haunts. This was something that was really big in Pathfinder.
In their Occult Adventures book, basically did this already.
Yeah. No shade. I'm glad that
fine.
5th edition is stealing this because it was really well done in Pathfinder, and it was a super good idea. It's basically like a supernatural trap. It's basically, which is a great idea.
An occult trap, right?
Yeah.
One that can't be disabled, or maybe can temporarily disabled by like a dispel magic or remove curse, but maybe needs some criteria fulfilled that relate to something that's going on in the actual adventure, which can be fun. It can be a way to tell your players some plot or story through a trap, right? Which is why they work so well a lot of the time. I'll also say they added rules, right, for fear and stress that are not the kind of horror mechanics that we got in the DMG. Stress, which we discussed in our previous episode on running horror games, is the best word to use here. And they used it. They must have listened to us, obviously. They didn't because, that's fine. They're not listening to us. But we came to the same conclusion. Stress is the best word. The mechanic is very simple. It works great.
I would not use these rules, but
I wouldn't use them either. But they
don't bother me.
Could.
They're not bad rules. Yeah. They are much better than every other previous version of this. And then they also have, and this was interesting. I didn't think I was going to like it, but then I did. These rules for survivors, which are basically like NPCs with some additional rules. Basically, your horror movie stock characters, and I think these would also be like, it would be really fun to maybe start out a game where your players are survivors and then they gain character levels. But also these are great rules for NPCs or companions of a sort. They've got this great art of a like bride covered in blood with a machete. Your classic final girl stuff. And I thought this was
it's great.
These were good, interesting rules for adding a little bit more mechanical depth to your people you might encounter in a horror scenario.
These are basically, you can use these as the sidekicks also. They're very similar to that from Tasha's Guide to Everything.
Yeah.
So you could even swap some of the abilities and add them on, I think.
So do we want to talk about the House of Lament real quick?
Yeah, really quickly. I mean, this is a pretty huge adventure, maybe 20 pages, and has a lot of depth. I think instead of going piece by piece, maybe just our overall takes on this.
Yeah, we don't need to go into it in detail, but we've talked repeatedly about how we always want every campaign book to include an adventure, most books to include an adventure. This seems like an obvious thing to include, and sometimes they don't. I really liked this. It had tons of detail. It had a whole section on seances, which I think is super fun. This was great. This is awesome. This is a great starting adventure. It's very detailed. It's super thorough. I'm a big fan of this.
Yeah, I will say it is an adventure that has everything that the Domains of Dread Ravenloft are supposed to promise. You've got some of the important good NPCs. You've got basically a tiny domain of dread. You've got a hint at the dark powers. You've got interactions with the mist. You got seances. You got haunts. You got some of the new monsters. They basically threw everything in here, right? There's even like links to some of the other domains, right? That being said, it is a little bit of a kitchen sink adventure that I feel like could be kind of overwhelming for players and characters. A couple flaws for all of this details. You gotta sort of do a lot of work about like why the players are here. The basic idea is they're a haunted house. There's in fact 3 different sort of spirits that players can contact. They have to. The house itself becomes a living haunt. They got to solve this. Why they're there in the first place and who brought them there, unless you want to go with the stock answer, which is one of Ravenloft's coolest NPCs has invited them there, but is going to not do any of the adventuring, which I hate, right? If you ditch that, right? Rob knows my least favorite thing is like start the adventure with a really cool NPC, Van Richten himself,
right?
The one wizard guy who's like investigating the nature of the dark powers. They're there. They're cool. They know how to do everything. However, they're just there to do seances at pre-elected times for your players.
Right.
A better way would be to like have the players like, I don't know, assigned or like given this task to go there on their own. Explore it. I'd give them a book that lets them do seances, or one character that like shakes when it's time to do another seance, instead of Van Richten yelling upstairs after they've just slugged it out with 24 Grindelows or whatever, and they're almost dead, being like, honey, time to come down for your next seance. The stage 2 of the plot's happening. It's also, you really got to read this one in depth. It can be very. Here's the thing with horror adventures in certain types, right? They have a very tragic backstory. Many bad things happen as the players explore the house. They discover that story. Piecing that together for your players from the clues can be very difficult as written. You've got to very much prepare this. So, that being said, it's got all the fun things, even an amber sarcophagus at the end. It's just an adventure that takes a little bit of work.
It's a lot. It's definitely like, I guess like this is what we get because like we've griped about them being too short or not having them, and this one's too much. But yeah, you'll have to adjust this one, but there's a lot of good stuff here. Maybe
it's not too much. It's just got the flaw of characters need a more explicit or implicit motivation You can handle that on your own as long as you're aware you've got to handle that on your own. Pick what NPC is going to be the target villain beforehand and prepare that handily. If you roll randomly, you wasted just a ton of prep time. Maybe pare down some of the encounters to just a couple things, and ditch the super cool NPC who's cooler than the players. Right? Have them be the one who assigned them, and the players are going to go meet with them afterwards or something like that. There's monsters too.
Monsters. The monster section is so good. I love a good monster section in general, but this is, of course, I guess it's the horror book, but one of the best. If you're a DM, the book might be worth buying just for the monsters themselves.
Yeah.
There's so many. It's not just. I mean, these are all horror monsters, but there's so many like good, classic, bad things. There's
the pod people plant from Invasion of the Body Snatcher.
Headless Horseman.
Boneless.
There's the Boneless. There's Starspawn. There's Ghost. There's Strigoi. There's Nosferatu. There's Loop Gurus. This is chef's kiss, Matt. I love everything in here. All this stuff is good.
The Priests of Osibus, the Star Spawns from Call of Cthulhu, Swarms of Maggots.
There's a thinly veiled Silent Hill Pyramid Head guy.
Oh, yeah, there's a Pyramid Head guy. You want a stats for him? You want Pyramid Head guy junior and senior.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Even some of the NPCs, the Inquisitors, who are like psionic Inquisitors who hunt supernatural evil.
These guys are rad.
Which I wish there was a psionic class now again, because they are super
maybe
cool.
someday. Yeah.
I love them.
Yeah. This is great. There's just like so much good stuff in here. Vampiric Mind Flayer. That's so like amazing stuff.
Classic D&D monster, the Vampire Mind Flayer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's the Unspeakable Horror, which we sadly can't speak about.
That's right. We're not allowed to talk about it. Sorry, everybody. Yeah.
We faced our fears. Those are the everything but the domains chapters of Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. Final halfway thoughts?
This is great. I've talked about before. At this point, I really want any book, but any D&D book, to have like a strong sense of theme and direction, and this has it. This, like I've said a bunch of times, was clearly written by fans of the horror genre who wanted to expand it, who wanted to make it possible to run a good, scary, compelling horror game in Dungeons & Dragons, which, despite all my praise, I have to insist, is not actually a great system for it a lot of the time. Again, I like D&D a lot, of course, and I think it can be modified to play all sorts of games. This is sometimes a bad fit. I think this book goes a long way towards making it a lot more likely that you'll be able to run a good horror campaign in Dungeons & Dragons.
This makes me wish that the next couple books coming out for Dungeons & Dragons from Wizards of the Coast would be like, this is so-and-so's guide to dungeon crawling. And it would be a DM book that would have a ton of dungeons, advice on building and mapping dungeons and making them cool. And then another one on like pulp action. And another
or
on
one on just fantasy.
Thrillers.
Would be terrific if they were just like,
we could just go back to fantasy.
Here's our like,
epic fantasy.
Epic
101.
fantasy. Yeah. Adventure fantasy, sword and sorcery. Like, do this, but for pulp action, or for fantasy, or for dungeon. Just like, do this again. Do this as many times as you like. I think this makes me want to run. I'm really like not that into horror games. It's not my favorite genre, but I'm super excited about this after reading it. And I'm at the very least, I'm going to try to like run a one shot or a short adventure for Halloween time. But if you are a fan of the horror genre, if your players want to play in that, this is terrific. This is just, as of late, I think the Wizards books have been better and better. This is my favorite. This is definitely like my top 3 Maybe my favorite, honestly.
Of 5th edition.
Of 5th edition. This might be my favorite. I mean, I'm a DM, so I have clear interests, but this, as a DM, this might be my favorite book yet. It's definitely top 3.
And we're only halfway done.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Folks,
if you have other stuff you want us to talk about before we get to the Domains of Dread, let us know.
Yeah, but I'm really excited to talk about the Domains of Dread. Please tune in next time. We'll be talking about them in detail. If you have other thoughts or questions about anything we've talked about, absolutely write us at dmofnone@gmail.com. Add us on Twitter at dmofnone.
Or you can subscribe to our Patreon if you want more stuff.
That's right.
Please do it. It's fun.
Patreon.com/Dungeon Master of None. We've got some adventures there. We've got some bonus episodes, more to come. So, yeah. Stay tuned, everyone, for more Ravenloft, more Domains of Dread.
Remember, everyone, you're all just, a skeleton waiting to be. You're all just a ghost in training. That's what we all are.
That's right. All of us are just dust in the wind. We're already dead and just don't know it yet. So in the meantime, stay healthy, stay safe, and keep rolling them dice.
You don't know no money to get you some. You don't have no car to get you one. You don't have no self-respect. You feel like an insect. Well, don't you worry, buddy, 'cause here he comes through the ghettos and the barrio and the barry and the slum. His shadow is cast wherever he stands. Stacks of green paper in his red right hand.